For about 50 years, the entire tech industry has been running on one idea: Moore's Law. Essentially, make transistors smaller and everything gets faster, cheaper, and better. Now that was the core belief. And now we are hitting limits. Not just the, oh, it's getting tricky. I mean, physics is starting to say no, which is awkward because we built an entire global economy on the assumption that physics would keep saying yes. Now, the industry is doing what humans always do when a simple system stops working, replacing it with something much more complicated. This marks a turning point, leading to a future of computing that will look very different from the past. So let's talk about it. Moore's Law is an observation made by Intel co-founder Gordon Moore in 1965 that the number of transistors on a microchip doubles approximately every 2 years, while the cost of computers is halved. This exponential growth has driven rapid advancements in computing power, making electronics much smaller, faster, and more efficient over the past 60 or so years. But the future of computing is no longer about one thing getting better. It's about a whole lot of different technologies, each evolving a different part of the problem, working together at the same time. Historically, the challenge was computation, how fast we could process information. Now, the challenge is movement. How fast can we move that information? That's why we're seeing new prototypes of computing where memory lives closer to processing. There are 3 major players at the moment. 1, Photonic Computing, which is light-based systems that move data faster than electricity ever could. 2 is Neuromorphic Computing, brain-inspired architectures that reduce how much data needs to be moved at all. And 3rd is quantum computing, machines that are tackling problems that would overwhelm classical systems. Computers used to be limited by how fast they could calculate. Now they're being limited by how fast they can move information. And moving data turns out to be slow, expensive, and incredibly energy hungry. So engineers had a thought. What if we just stop moving the data and bring the computation to where the data already is? And that's where things start moving away from traditional approaches, opening the door for new technologies to step in and change how we think about computing. Let's talk about something new: Memristors. Think of them as a special kind of memory. Most computer memory forgets everything the moment the power turns off. But Memristors can remember what happened before, even with no power. They don't just store information, they also remember how electricity moved through them in the past. Now that makes them really unique. Now you might be thinking, okay, but my phone already remembers stuff. But here's the big difference. Memristors can store information and do calculations all in the same place. Normally computers have to move data to a processor, do the math, move it back. Now this back and forth takes time and energy. Memristors don't need that. They can do both jobs at once, right where the data is. And that's a big deal, because a lot of modern computing, especially AI, is just repeating the same math over and over again. Now here's the really cool part. Memristors can actually do the math using electricity itself. You send in electricity, it flows through, and the answer comes out. No traditional step-by-step computing needed. It's almost like instead of a computer thinking through a problem, you let electricity solve it naturally. Before we get too excited, there's a problem. Actually, a few problems. These systems are analog, which means they don't always behave perfectly. They can be a bit messy. They have things like noise, extra unwanted signals, variability, they don't act the same every time, and drift. They slowly change over time. Basically, they can be a little unpredictable. So to make them useful, we have had to add extra parts to help control them, like converters, calibration such as fine-tuning, correction systems to fix mistakes. And because of that, your super efficient system suddenly needs extra work to keep it running. So yes, it's powerful, but it's also more complicated than it first seems. At the same time as Memristors, another group of engineers has had a very different idea. They said, what if we used light to do computing instead of electricity? This is called Photonic Computing. Here's why that's exciting. Light can move super fast, faster than electricity and wires. So computers using light can send information almost instantaneously. Now these systems are incredibly quick. They can do work in a tiny fraction of a second. And even better, lots of light beams can travel at the same time without getting in each other's way. That means computers can work on many things at once. Sounds perfect, right? Well, not quite. There's a problem. These systems are not good at storing information. So even though they're super fast at processing, they still need regular electronic parts to hold onto this data. So you end up with something like this, a super fast system that still depends on slower parts to keep everything running. It's kind of like a Formula 1 race car waiting for a bicycle to bring it fuel. And just to make things even more interesting, we have quantum computing. This isn't just a faster computer, it's a completely different way of computing. Normal computers use bits which are either zeros or ones, but quantum computers use something called qubits. Qubits can either be 0, 1, or both at the same time, or anything in between. This is because of something called superposition. Superposition means a qubit doesn't have to choose right away. It can be in a kind of state in between both 0 and 1 until we check it. Because of this, quantum computers don't work step by step like normal ones. Instead, they can explore lots of possible answers all at the same time. That makes them really good at certain hard problems. For example, breaking apart really big numbers, which used to keep passwords safe, or understanding how tiny things like atoms and molecules behave. That second one is especially exciting. It means scientists could test new medicines or materials in a kind of virtual world instead of guessing. So instead of slow trial and error, they could figure things out much faster. Right now, these computers aren't ready for everyday use yet. They're still being built and improved, but governments and companies are already preparing for them, because when they do the work properly, they could change things like security, science, and really complex problem solving. The biggest challenge right now isn't building more qubits, but rather making sure they work correctly. Quantum systems are very delicate, and tiny mistakes can mess everything up. So a lot of work today is focused on something called error correction, which basically means fixing mistakes faster than they happen. And it turns out to be really difficult. Also, and this is important, quantum computers don't work alone. They require classical computers to control them, read them, correct them in real time. So even here, the future is not replace everything, it's a combination of everything. And that's the pattern across all of this. There's no single winner. There's no next transistor. There's just a growing collection of specialized tools. Each is good at one thing, each is terrible at others. All are forced to work together, which brings us to the real bottleneck. The integration, combining all of these technologies, is incredibly hard. You have different materials, different temperatures, different manufacturing process, different software needs, and somehow they all need to fit into one system. This is why something as unglamorous as packaging, which is literally how chips are put together, is becoming one of the biggest challenges in technology. For example, integrating photonic and neuromorphic components on a single chip is a real-world packaging nightmare. Photonics needs special materials and precise alignment, whilst electronics rely on normal silicon processes that we're all used to. We're just getting these two to communicate without melting, misfiring, or slowing each other down. This requires layers of specialized connections and new cooling techniques. Suddenly, the simple act of putting chips together becomes an engineering saga. It's like we solved space travel but can't close the box. And lastly, there's the software, which is basically the instructions that tell computers what to do. Right now, we are still missing some important things. We don't have easy tools to build programs. We don't have one clear way to write code for these new systems. and it's hard to turn real-world problems into something else computers understand. We also don't have great tools to translate ideas into computer language, fix mistakes when something goes wrong, make programs run faster and better, or reuse helpful pieces of code. Some projects are trying to build better tools. Projects like LLVM help turn code into instructions for different kinds of computers. Google Circ helps people program quantum computers. And Intel's One API tries to make it easier to use many different types of computers together. But right now, all of these tools are still growing and improving. We're building powerful new kinds of computers, but we're still figuring out how to actually use them easily. Let's take a step back and look at the bigger picture. So far, we've been talking about the technology, but there's another really important part of the story: money, countries, and power. Governments all over the world are spending billions of dollars on this. They're also making rules about who can buy or sell certain technology. Why? Because this stuff is really important and really powerful. But there are also problems getting all the parts needed to build these computers. And there are big worries about safety, especially when it comes to keeping information secret. Right now, we use special codes called encryption to protect things like messages, bank details, passwords. But in the future, super powerful quantum computers might be able to break these codes. Because of that, people are already working on new, stronger codes that even quantum computers can't easily break. These are called post-quantum cryptography. So where does that leave us? With all these changes, it's worth considering the bigger picture and the path ahead. We're at the end of simple progress. Now it's about combining things, optimizing tools, specializing parts, and managing trade-offs. Speed versus energy versus accuracy versus efficiency. It's scalability versus complexity. The winners will be the technologies that fit best into real systems. The future of computers isn't just one big magical invention. It's a lot of different technologies all working together for everyday people. This means technology might change in ways we don't actually expect, but we might get smarter phones, cooler AI features, brand new apps, and devices that haven't even been thought of yet. And all of this will be powered by different technologies working together behind the scenes. It could also change jobs in technology. Instead of just knowing one thing, people might need to understand a mix of hardware, the physical parts, software, the code, and how everything connects. As everything becomes more connected, our devices and even how we work will keep changing in surprising ways. One thing is clear: we are not slowing down. We are changing direction, from smaller to smarter systems, from one solution to many, and from simple progress to something much more complicated.